Welcome to Euphoria episode 9, season 10. They all blur together. I won't lie. We passed our 100th episode a while back, I realized. We didn't celebrate it. I forgot. We're not great here.
Wait, when was that? Do you remember?
No idea.
Okay,
I just realized. No, I don't know.
No.
Actually, I was just looking back at all the years of Euphoria, and I realized we passed a lot. So this is the unofficial 100th episode celebration.
Woo! We
I
did
decided
it!
in the 5
We're in
seconds
the
it took
vicinity,
Phil to
give or
calm
take
down.
20.
Brought Betty on. He's been here for so long with us. Welcome, Betty. You're
Hello.
a special guest today.
You're in my spot, though, dude. I don't really like that.
Well, it's my spot,
Is it
really.
though?
The studio was built for me and Lore, so that's Lore's spot, and that's my spot, and that's the only things that are like set in stone officially. Lore for the interviews, me for this podcast.
Giga Chad Betty, host,
I
analyst.
can't believe someone made that a weird GIF.
Yeah,
Giga
they did
Betty?
one for me too.
Yeah.
That's weird. Shout out to
Giga
BTTV and 7TV or whatever. That it's kind of creepy, but I respect
appreciate
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sick. I love them.
This podcast is available on SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. It was a break week for the LEC. It doesn't necessarily mean it was a break week for us. We were working on
something.
Well, I mean, at this point,
They know what it
4
is.
hours away
We're cooking
from
it up.
the LEC Cypher featuring Dan Bull, Rustage, Caedrel, Shocks, myself, Vedius.
6 teams,
6
rappers.
teams, absolute insanity.
5 rappers and a degenerate streamer.
There you go. That's right. Rude to call Rustage a degenerate stream. I'm kidding. I'm not throwing shots like that. He's cracked. You guys are going to see that later today, so brace yourself when this podcast is done. It'll just be a few hours until that comes out. Hope that you guys like it. It was a labor of love.
Freddy gets smashed. Spoiler.
By who?
Okay. We'll let the fans
The man
decide.
that wrote your bars? I know.
No, man, you didn't write any.
Yeah.
Okay, let's come on. Give him some time. He's rap battle's not even out yet. You don't need to take the cheap
His
shots.
balls were great. His balls were great. You did a really good job. You did a really good job.
Anyway, speaking
I'm
of
proud of you. I'm proud of you. No, you did a really great job.
All right. Look, speaking of people getting absolutely destroyed, the standings are behind you, and dreams were absolutely destroyed 2 weeks ago now, week 8. It was an absolutely insane super week that ended to the surprise of many. I think all of us, I can say safely, with Vitality being eliminated alongside Astralis and SK, maybe less surprising. But to commemorate a long, difficult season and an untimely death for these teams.
Our hands together for this one.
Rest in peace. We need quick eulogies for each team. Betty, you're the guest, so you can pick which team you want to do your eulogy for. You need to give me a 30-second to 1-minute monologue about one of these teams, and like you're giving a speech at a funeral. They died too young.
Oh my words.
They had such amazing talent, but it just didn't quite.
Okay.
Timer real quick. You good? You know what you want to say?
I mean, we'll wing it. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Do you know which team are you picking?
Vitality, I guess.
Okay. Go whenever you're ready. I'll just generally. I don't want to interrupt you, so I'll just generally cut you
Can we
off.
put some small music over this? On the
Yeah, Phil, put some stuff in post. Give us that generic sad music.
Small violin.
Okay.
Small violin.
Today, we look back on the memory of Vitality, a team that was 1 win away from greatness. Perks, a player that throughout his career has never missed a world championship. For the first time, we'll miss it. The West has known much success off the back of Perks and many other players on this roster, but we will not have that this year.
The 2-shot barrage.
The true shot barrage. So, Vitality, in the 3% of scenarios where you did not make playoffs, unfortunately, this is the one where Thanos won. Take care. See you next year.
That was beautiful.
That was good.
That was beautiful.
Damn, you really came in with that with some
That was-
slow
that was-
pace.
that was-
like,
yeah,
today
damn.
we are
You
gathered
consider being an
here.
actor? This is good. You're just ready.
Yeah, I
off
think
the
about
cuff.
it a lot, actually.
I think we should just do this segment, but actually do not actually.
Okay, now do the other teams as well.
Do the other teams, okay.
No,
Who's SK?
No, he has to go. You have to go. You want SK or you want Astralis?
So we're just going to assume that BDS died a long time ago?
No, we said goodbye to goodbye to BDS probably in week 3, and
You just got the shovel out, found the back
they
garden.
were statistically eliminated a long time ago, and I don't know if they ever got their eulogy, but
Okay, I'll do Astralis.
okay, go for it, my friend. Whenever you're ready.
Today we are gathered here again, 30 seconds after the death of Vitality, to commemorate and remember Astralis, who brought over all these veterans, so much success and prestige, in the hopes to make playoffs. The rookie of Yonghoon, MVP. No, not MVP. Rookie of the split. Sorry there. A lot of great games, a lot of great comebacks. They were different, you know. They didn't want to win early game. They didn't want to win mid game. They liked scaling. They liked the late game. But now they will scale 6 feet under. And we will see them next year.
To the stars.
To the stars.
To the stars.
To the stars.
Some say they're still scaling. Up in heaven.
Shoot for the stars and you'll reach the moon.
Oh, I feel bad. Rest in peace, Astralis. Notable effort.
This is really sad.
I'll go last. Yeah, I mean, it's really intense. We'll cut them. We'll change pace like instantly after this because we got to go to All-Pro. So I'll do SK last. SK, you had some great drafts, some great moments.
It's true.
You found Poppy and Talia before anyone else did.
Also true.
As long as we look exclusively at the LEC and not the LCK or LPL teams you stole your drafts from. They're worthless. SK, you made a beautiful and valiant effort. We thought you would upset the apple cart and you could come so much farther. But you fell short. And now, the fans aren't going to get to see you on that playoff stage.
No, they will not.
And I wonder if they'll see the same roster again next year. And I hope they see some of the pieces. There's so much progress. Gen X looking better in the top lane. Really everything coming together with Certus there at the end.
Wrap it up.
Your coach, still so incredibly handsome.
He's so handsome.
He's just so handsome.
No, it's not
Wrap it up,
fair.
Daniel.
He's
Wrap
just
it up.
so
Daniel,
handsome.
Wrap it up. Wrap it up.
Goodbye, Swiffer. God. And SK, you'll be missed.
All right. There you go. There you go. Cool. All right.
Man,
So
I realized that we were on a podcast and I swore in that. And I was like, whoops, all right, we're going to have to bleep
And just
that
remember,
out.
every
Yeah.
time you swear, you have to give Phil $1 because he has to go through and find the exact moment and like dip it or whatever they make him do.
We can
these
just
days.
mute my mic during that whole period. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just see me miming
Say a
in the
few words
background.
about Astralis.
No.
Or we put the parent sound effect in from the wah 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 wah.
Anyway.
Okay,
sorry.
but we do need to talk about this. Actually, before we move on, we do need to talk about this a little bit because, like, eulogies aside, you know, it's sad to see these teams go. Vitality actually get 3%
They did a
of
Caedrel.
scenarios.
They did a Caedrel.
they did a Caedrel.
Yeah.
Except I had 4% and they had 3%, so they one-upped me. Next year there'll be someone with 2% and then 1%.
This is to
So
me.
for clarification on that, because pros never used in the right context. When we talk about the percentages, we're talking about the Thanos number of universes in which Vitality
Yes.
win. So like if you had 100 universes, Vitality won in like 97 of them.
And
right?
that's assuming 50-50 chances.
That
So
is
that's assuming
50-50
Vitality
chances.
or Thanos fighting an identical copy of Thanos. That's
Yes.
not like it's the Avengers and they all suck and Thanos
Wait, so
is like
how many
big
times
bad.
do you have to flip a coin to land on heads in a row to make the same odds that Vitality don't make playoffs? Because that sounds...
It's a lot. There was
a
a
lot.
lot of scenarios.
Yes.
It's 2 scenarios is the final game. Then you multiply that by 2 for every single other. Oh, that's my timer. Sorry about that, boys. That was for the eulogy. Maybe you can hear that at home. Maybe not. We'll just continue on.
But the point is that like the number of scenarios where Vitality made it versus the number of scenarios where they didn't was obviously significantly higher, and that's the position you found yourself in when you were in the Schalke Miracle Run year, right?
And I thought the approach from XL coming into that Super Week was just pure scaling. Pick a Zeri, pick a late game scaling AD carry. But then they changed it all up in the tiebreaker. They played like a TF Thresh lane into Orianna. And you could see Perks in that game was really aware of how they're playing the game. Even level 2, he was emoting, like pressing W on top of himself, standing right next to his tower. But he still got flash stunned. He still got hooked. There was moments where he wanted to check a push on Orianna. He wanted to throw his Q in. As he did, hook hits, he's dead. So that game for Perks was really hard to play. Like a no-cleanse Orianna into TF Thresh. And I feel from a bit because every single time he knows it's going to happen, it still happens. And he just shakes his head laughing because he knows he could have just dodged it if he just played 1 centimeter further back. So I'm sure they're really kicking themselves.
But they had 5 games. They went 0-5, I'm pretty sure. At least I'm pretty sure it was
they went
0-4.
But they were on a
so it's
5-game
long.
lose streak at the end.
Oh,
They
right.
finished with 5 games.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those losses were to... I'm just going to bring it up.
Well, they lost
lost
1 to SK.
They lost 1
to
to SK. And again, credit to SK. That was a very incredible game from SK. But like Vitality just like straight up collapsed in that final.
Oh,
week.
yeah. I mean, I think...
It's crazy.
You could see the cracks start to show. Like, I think their AD carry cards, he was really underperforming the split.
Well,
I think that his team 5 positionings was just kind of weak throughout the entirety of the split.
and I'm with you, but the thing is, we saw some of that at the start, and then it got better. We had EUphoria, he was talking about it getting better, and then it got worse again, but they were still getting enough wins that it seemed like it was fine. And it seemed like those issues like had solved themselves for a week or two. It seemed like everything was good, everything was on the up and up, and then it was just like crashing down, just instant fiery ball. You know, they were flying high, and then just bam, just instantly.
Yeah. So this was it. See, so they beat Misfits in week 5, and then they beat XL in week 6, and then they beat G2 in week 6, and then they beat BDS in week 7. And it was when you had Alfari on after week 6 where he was like, we've got BDS, Astralis, and SK.
Yeah.
And that was when you guys had that fit of laughter where you were like, surely we won't lose. And then they did beat BDS. And I seem to remember that one being a pretty close game, but I don't fully remember how that one played out. And then they lose to Astralis, and then they lose to SK. And then they have to play Fnatic, Rogue, and XL. Well, they have to play XL in the tiebreak.
And the Fnatic game was the 50-minute Zeri. Was it the Zeri game?
Yeah.
Oh my lord. That was the Senna, Flash Polymorph, Hilly. I mean, a lot of things went
But they
wrong for
needed
them.
one win of those
I know,
5.
Vedi. I was there as well. I just need one win. I feel
it was crazy. But as I mentioned, it's crazy that Perks won't be at Worlds. He's never missed it. Whether he's in NA or in EU, he's always gone to Worlds.
And also, I mean, the Worlds thing and the playoffs things too. This is the first time in a long time. And maybe this doesn't speak to the strength of our league, but at least speaks to the competitiveness of our league, where I was like, I wish we had room for more teams in playoffs, because I feel like this is the first time I've looked at 7 teams and said, I want to see 7 teams at a best of 5. Normally it's like, I want to see 5, maybe 4 teams at a best of 5, and like the other 2 of you are just here to be slaughtered. You know, like I do not care.
It does feel like a lot of the time in the playoffs, it's just like one of the 2 teams you just already doubt from the get-go. But this time around, it's hard to doubt all 6. The only one that you could maybe, I mean, we'll talk about it later, is like the Misfits playoffs kind of fall off, but even then it's difficult. I think that's just because of the matchup they have against G2, right? Who's just the best of 5 king.
Well, and I'm curious to see what they look like in a best of 5 at least, which I can't. After their last playoffs performance, I'm surprised to be in that position again, because that was rough. Kind of just like targeted VTO, and then like the team did nothing. But now it feels like there's a little bit more going on, and Vitality are a team that I think. I don't want to say would have thrived in best of 5. I don't think that's fair, especially given how much their downturn was. But it's a team I wanted to see in best of 5.
The thing that I think is most frustrating is in this 4-game win streak that they had, I legitimately felt like that they had a really good jungle support synergy.
They felt like a top 3 team to me.
And that was it, right? Like because I felt like all split, they'd always had good solo lanes. Always. Alfari and Perks, I never sat there and thought that these guys are the problem. I just thought that it was the way in which their jungle support played around the rest of the lanes. And during these win streaks, it was very evident how much better I thought Haru was playing, not only individually, but with Labrov too. And then to have that suddenly just disappear again, I don't know what happened. I just don't know. It's it's kind of crazy how they kind of went from there.
Shocker.
Yeah, next year's going to be crazy. The off season is going to be absolutely wild.
With the teams coming in,
there's no way.
Koi, Heretics.
There is no way that this roster stays together. I don't know what part of it is going to stay the same, but like,
I mean, Vitality have what 3
junglers,
top tier LEC junglers on contract. Like they can't keep them all. They can't just collect them like Pokemon, you know, it's not like if they can get Elyoya and Yankos too, and they'll just like create an artificial
just buy
gap
every player,
artificial gap in jungle talent by just buying out the rest of the pool.
No, off season will be pretty wild. I think Vitality probably have a lot to go back to the drawing board with, because I mean, just as the final thing on them, you look at their roster start of the year, should make at least playoffs, make at least worlds, and now we're at a case where they don't even make playoffs in summer, right? Even with the upgrades, quote unquote, of Haru that they thought would change everything, just made them at lower standing, I believe. So
yeah, they were worse.
Yeah. I mean, brutal. And I think it's like we've seen that both for Fnatic and Vitality, the 2 promised super teams. That Fnatic obviously came together in spring, had a good season. We'll see what they can do in summer, as they did rally in that final week in a way that was really important, in a way that a lot of us didn't expect. But it's something we'll track, and we'll get to talk more about Fnatic, obviously, in their matchup versus Excel shortly in a little bit. For now, though, the other side of the coin, the other interesting thing happened post week 8, All-Pro. All the All-Pro votes coming in on that Sunday/Monday once the league had finished, and we have our first All-Pro team. It's the Mad Lions and Broken Blade.
I think there was the same kind of thing in most regions. I think the LCS, I don't know if the LCK had the same
I know
thing
the LCS they did, because they had Someday and then EG.
Yeah.
And then I believe LCK also had the same thing. I think that they had Genji, plus they had
I think, and then Zeus.
and then Zeus, yeah.
So they did. So LCK, LEC, and LCS basically had the same thing with 4 players in a new
the reason why I was surprised by this is because I expected it to be more contentious, given how close the split was. I genuinely thought Comp would be above Unforgiven. The thing that I will say is that when you kind of look at the voting, it was actually very diverse. But the way in which the All-Pro voting works is you get 3 points for first, 2 points for second, 1 point for third.
Yep.
So basically, if you are on everybody's list, you're going to get the most points. I think that Unforgiven was actually pretty consistent with his first places. It was between him, but then the other first places were like Comp or Patrick or like Neon. And these other three, but Unforgiven was on a lot of people's lists. And then like the rest of the pool was really contentious. But it was really close. Like when I was looking at Chakrez, the man responsible for organizing all the votes and stuff, he said that Unforgiven was at 94 points with Comp at 84. So there was only a 10-point difference, which it was super close between the top two. And I think everyone could pretty much agree that top two is pretty close. Jungle, I think everyone agreed Eljoya, Yankos, Markoon. That wasn't too surprising.
Xerxes as well was debatable.
I rated Xerxes third, but to have him in top four, that also makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Support was Kaiser, Targamas, Trimby. A lot of people put Zhonghoon as fourth, which I also understand. Like, that also makes sense to me. I think the most contentious ones were arguably top lane and mid lane. The only reason why top lane was contentious was because Broken Blade was a clear favorite, but then you had Alfari at 73, Odawamne at 69, and then Armored at 62. And so it was quite close. It was just a matter of how you rated the teams. I personally think Armored was a little short-handed because I do genuinely think he had a really good split.
He did.
That was kind of one of the questions I want to ask is, do you feel that like Arma got a little bit snubbed here? Because I think this is probably the best season that we've seen from Arma in terms of
LEC,
individual laning. And obviously he's always come up clutch in the best of fives for Mad, and I'm curious to see what that looks like in playoffs. But he's talked as long as he's been in this league about improving his laning, and this feels like the split where it's been the most obvious that he has just really improved.
And what I will say is, in playoffs now that Alfari is gone, I think the only two carry top laners we have in Europe is Armut and Broken Blade. I think every other one of those top laners will lean more towards team facilitation, and
Finn?
maybe Renekton. I think Finn, in their last couple of weeks, he was leaning more towards Ornn. And I think the only carry that Finn was like excelling at was GP.
Yeah.
But GP is not really meta anymore. And now if you look at the LPL and it's Fiora, Jax blinds, we see Yone counters into Sejuani. I think the only two teams that could probably pull that off is G2 and Mad. So I think that's why when we talk about it later, they're my favorites for playoffs because they can actually play on 3 lanes and they can actually have 3 different roles they can carry. But I do think Armut is one of those players that falls under the category of carry tops. He's been playing Jax in the last few weeks, Renekton, Aatrox, Gwen, right? He is willing to just go for R5s, right? So I do have a lot of credit for him in that respect.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting set of votes, though, and I think you're right. I think that obviously the format of all-pro voting is...
So I think the debate should come in as to like how effective the system is when the split is as close as we've had it. Because when people are splitting their votes left, right, and center, every first place has a lot of value for the individual.
I think you should maybe rate top 5 and we should only see top 3. Because you don't get points if you're just not on someone's list. But there's a lot of people who might have been 4th that could have gotten that one additional point that might have made the difference. True. Because Unforgiven, it's pretty split like you highlighted. And for people, keep in mind, people when they're voting first, Unforgiven was 33%, 40%. Just off the top of my head, I got the sheet in front of me, but I'm not gonna count here. Comp was another 33%, and then you had like a mixture of like some upsets, some other names in there too. Yeah. But because if you didn't vote for Unforgiven first, most people put him second.
Exactly.
That's actually what put him ahead. He was most people's first choice for second place, but that secured him first place because it was so divided in first place, and that's like the difference maker, right? And system. That's the logic, So that that's why I think that like you can debate how effective the tool is, but I think that what it does do is it shows a pretty top 3, and I think that based on the top 3s, I'm not upset. I think the most contentious one right now is the mid one, Nisqy versus Caps. And I understand why it's contentious. To put some numbers behind it, when I was doing a little bit more research, so both teams ended 12-6 at the end of the regular season. So to be clear, contentious between, you said Nisqy
and Caps. Mad found themselves 6-3, 6-3 in both halves of the split, whereas G2 were 4-5 in the first half, and then they were 8-1 in the second half. And a lot of people attributed the 8-1 success of G2 in the second half to Caps. I would say that like Yankos and Broken Blade also had a really great second half. But aside from that, Caps also definitely improved, especially when you look at those 5 losses. Caps in particular was being targeted a lot. He was dying a lot. I made a tweet, I think back in like week 4 or the beginning of week 5, where I said that Caps currently leads the league in deaths at 48. I haven't updated that stat because our stats guy is on a bit of a break right now. But he died a lot, and he was targeted a lot, and he was struggling a little bit in that like early to mid part of the season. And that was a large part for me why I rated him second. Because when I looked at the entire season as a whole, I felt like Nisqy was a player that was consistently solid in the same way that I rated Vito last split. Vito had games where he didn't necessarily hard carry, but he was always at that same benchmark of performance. And for me, I think that Nisqy was kind of at that level. But I think the fascinating thing to me that kind of made this topic controversial was this concept of the narratives that we've created around Nisqy. And I'd love to know what propaganda it is that we've sold people.
Let's rather than like, let's say like, what is your official stance on Nisqy? What is the official stance on Nisqy as a player? Let's say that rather than like, because if we don't have anything firm to touch there, and it's just people, because I heard some of this. And this is not trying to start beef here, but obviously like Yankos came out and said he feels like narrative around Yankos is being pushed by casters, and like obviously that word just instantly triggers people. I think people don't really understand what that means or where narratives come from. But there are, and like don't get me wrong, there are some things that are like blatantly just narratives. The King's Legacy Dynasty is just like it's just
story.
Yeah, it's just literally just about making a mountain out of the achievements of teams. Like that's about building it up to be more than it is, but it's not tied to one player. So I think it's less egregious. So let's just say like what is your stance on Nisqy? How do you view Nisqy? Where do you see Nisqy in the scheme of things? Is maybe where we can start, and then like what you feel like people are
Sure. Well, I think that Nisqy is just very consistent and very reliable. And while I think that it's fair to make the argument that individually he's not going to like 1v1 you in lane, or that he's unlikely to make that insane team fight play that can clutch up, and in to say that his Silas, he's done that a bunch of times this split as well. But to say that he has the same highs as a player like Caps, I would agree that he's probably not there. But the ways in which he manages his wave is something that I don't see any other mid really do in the league. In particular, like the Talia versus Ari matchup is super common. The Lissandra versus Ari matchup, the Ari matchup in general, these are all matchups that he has played. And in every matchup, he always gets push. Everyone. Yeah. And if he needs to get a wave pushing, he will get it. And the reason why he does it is so that he can be on time to play with Elyoya. And a lot of people will say like, well, he has the best jungle support in the league, so of course he's going to look good. But I think that what is underappreciated is how well he too plays for his jungle support. Like there was this really incredible play once where Elyoya, he does a full clear bot side into an invade onto blue buff. They have like a Draven bot lane, so they're already pushing in that wave. And Nisqy, who's kind of like getting pushed in lane, suddenly gets the push so that he can time his arrival at blue with Elyoya. His timing is perfect. And then they transition into a contest over the blue. They like steal away the Gromp, and then they walk away with the blue buff. Everything is happy. And just the way in which he consistently finds ways to do that is something that's really stood out to me and has made him like a very effective early game mid laner that works super well with his team.
I mean, there's so much evidence that he is just so good at playing for team. You look at the times on Cloud9. When he was the mid in Cloud9, Sven Skaren won MVP jungler. Blabber won MVP jungler. He is like a mid laner that can facilitate junglers to make them shine. Elyoya was good last split.
Yeah.
Now he looks like the best jungler in the league.
Well, Elyoya was good last split on like a sinking ship. He was like the single beacon of hope.
Yeah.
And now it's like, and that's the thing. It's like we can transition maybe a little bit into the MVP discussion. I think that like if someone wants to tell me that Caps is the best European mid laner hands down, sure. Did he show it in this regular season? Well, a little bit. Sometimes no. You're right on the death stat. Number 1 in deaths. I don't think that's entirely indicative. He's much more aggressive player. But to your statistically for Nisqy, number 1 in kill participation at 14 minutes. This is a guy who has the highest jungle proximity, not because his lane is always getting camped, but more often than not because he's roaming with his jungler very early on. Now, does he have really low damage share? Yeah. Is his DPM high? Also, yeah. Some of that is picks. Some of that is like the fact that he is a facilitator playing for other carries.
And that's the big difference, because when you look at Caps, one of the things that stood out for him was even when he was dying a lot, his damage numbers were always very high. He was still finding ways to be useful and being valuable, even if he was just getting targeted and focused a lot. And that's why I think it's great to have both super talented mid laners.
Yeah.
But I also appreciate that I think the consensus is these are our top 2. And as long as everyone can agree that they're the top 2, does it really matter in the All-Pro whether they come first or second?
People attach to it, and I think it matters to some people, but I think the thing for me is just clarifying, and I think we, to a certain degree, have done that. I think Caps right now, if you're drafting a team and you start in your first pick, I still think Caps is my first pick.
I think most people would pick Caps.
Most people would pick Caps as your first pick. But if you are looking at Mad Lions last season and you pick a mid laner and you want to sub in a mid laner, I would actually pick a Nisqy in that situation. That's a situation where I say, hey, I need a jungler who needs to be set up for success. I've got a great support. I need a player who is comfortable sacrificing themselves, roaming, playing for other people to make that team work. Now, a lot of teams would just pick up Caps because why would you not just take him at any opportunity? But he doesn't have that same track record of like filling this specific gap that Mad Lions needed Nisqy to fill, and Nisqy plays that role so well. He's a pretty selfless player. Is he putting out insane damage numbers? Like, for context, our top 3 in damage per minute, which is a game length by a stat, a win by. It's not a perfect stat by any means.
It's not perfect, but
it's Humanoid, Caps, and Larssen, and that lines up a lot with what you expect these players. Humanoid is obviously first picking Zeri like an absolute psycho. Still no idea why.
He also just does a lot of damage in general.
And those guys are mid lane carries, and they've all also been facilitators for their team. But I think Nisqy is clearly the facilitating mid laner, and he is the piece ultimately that like solved the Mad Lions puzzle this season. So I think it's close. I think anyone.
But I think that the important thing to me is that like I don't want fans to disrespect Nisqy, because for me the thing that I feel frustrated by is when people go out and say that its narratives are the reason why he's rated first. I think that's very disrespectful to a player who I believe has earned his right to be considered top 2 in Europe right now based on the regular season.
Well,
because he's had a great split, and to sit there and say that he's only achieved that or he's only recognized that because of the stories that we've told, I think is very unfair to him as an individual and the work that he has put in.
Well, I've told more stories about Caps and Perks in my day than I've told about any other player. I never had a problem with that. And they're obviously great players, decorated players with a ton of achievement, and that's the thing, is you build them up and you celebrate them. And I think the struggle is that like bias, narrative is a word that just gets thrown around to immediately discredit an argument without actually looking at the argument. So
I think that's fair.
Yankos, in this case, because he's a clip, and again, no shade to Yankos, he's entitled to his opinion, absolutely. Doesn't like this opinion, quickly attributes it to narrative, but maybe it would be healthier, and maybe we can film this discussion at some point. I don't know, I'm just pitching content ideas.
That's great.
Can just talk about the arguments and the merits of the argument. And to keep in mind, too, casters are always going to be limited in their perspective because they see exclusively the games on stage. So maybe Yankos is watching scrims where Nisqy's getting smashed every single scrim by Caps, and he's like, how is this possible? But it's also like, that's the material we are voting off. That's the material we're working on. It would actually be inappropriate for us to just watch your scrims to see your point. We would need to literally watch every scrim. Like, we're playing with the information that we have. And I think that those votes are based on that. And it would be weird to base them on anything else, because let's say every single person who voted goes back and just watches every single scrim, and then suddenly this All-Pro looks completely different, and our audience is like, what are you talking about? Like, we got to watch 18 games, and now Xerxes is number 1, and like, Certus is number 1. It's like, bro, you didn't see the scrims. And it's like, we could only work with the information that everybody has access to. It would be completely unfair to our audience to do otherwise. So I would understand if there's hidden information there, but I think it's unfair if that is the reason.
I mean, from my time as a pro, when it comes to All-Pro voting, there's some splits where, I don't want to say it in a disrespectful way, but you just think off the top of your head the junglers you just played against in scrims, which were good, and you just say that. You don't really look at their competitive games. I don't sit there and, like, as a pro and watch like Xerxes games. I don't watch Gilius's games. I just play against them, see how I feel against them, play against them in scrims, see how I feel against them in scrims. If I think they're bad, I'll just not put them on the list. I think they're good, I'll put them on the list, right? And maybe the surface of the competitive games that the fans see and the casters see is a lot different, right? Because you have these games where, let's take Nisqy as an example, maybe he's like, he is a gem on stage, right? He's playing so well, he's top 2 mid next to Caps. I go into a scrim game and I'm a mid laner and I just solo kill him, or I, out roam him and we beat them 3-2 in a block or 4-1 very recently, then I'll think, I don't think he's that good. Actually, Caps is better laning, Caps is better team fight, so now I'll put Caps first, right? So
I even remember
it's a lot more experience.
When you first joined us, like, because you were still in that pro player mindset, sometimes you'd be like, I can't believe this jungler has rated this. I just smash this guy in scrims all the time. Like, it was super
I don't want to say it's ego, but it's like you can feel how good a player is when you play against him 4 or 5 times in a scrim. You have like this gut feeling as to how good they are, and that can tell you basically whether you think you can respect them or not.
And I think it's important also that, like, we don't want to invalidate that opinion, right? Because obviously it's still a super valuable opinion, and that perspective is also super valuable. And like, based on the voting, all the pros largely agreed with us anyway, because most people put Nisqy second regardless. Like,
and I'll just say to teams and to players, the more information that is public, scrims, communication, everything, the more accurate the voting will be. Like if you're like,
just leak it all.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying just leak it. I'm not saying just leak it all.
We're
like,
also fine with that.
I mean, yeah. Then like if you want give people perfect information, because we're playing and always will be with imperfect information by design. But if you're like, oh man, this guy wasn't, and again, this is kind of straw manning Yankos because his argument wasn't. We're just making assumptions here. His argument wasn't that this guy sucked in scrims.
Yeah,
it's just like this is information that he has access to that we don't. This can change his opinion. It's just until that information is public. Like, what are we going to do? Like, what can we talk about? It's like, oh, maybe the X player is super toxic and we don't know about it and we're building up, this guy, but he's super toxic. If we don't know that, what are we supposed to do about it? Like, we can only work with the information we have. We can only work with the information that's public, which is why I love interviewing players, because more of that information becomes public. But without that, we're just working on what everybody has access to, or it's the weird, like, I don't know, I heard behind the scenes that Perks can bench 240 pounds, so he must be the strongest player in the league. And people are like, well, is there any proof? And you're like, no, but I heard,
The main thing that I wanted to get at was that, like, I don't think Nisqy being first is that controversial. And I think that when you look at the overall performances of Mad and G2, Mad was pretty consistent throughout the split. I think you can argue that towards the end of the second half, they looked a little shakier, which I think is a very fair perspective. And G2 with their 8-1 second half, obviously they looked a lot better. Mm-hmm. And it is fair that if you want to base recent performance more than all regular split performance, it's very valid if you want to rate Caps above him. And I think that both those are very fair arguments.
Final thing. Before we transition away, we've got 2 interviews coming up today. Razork, Comp. We're going to talk to both of them. Really quickly, frontrunners for MVP. TLDR, we'll get to talk more in a future episode about why we think, who we think. But just starting with you, Caedrel, who's your frontrunner for MVP right now?
Well, I voted for Nisqy.
You already voted, so I can't say
I already
frontrunner.
voted. Yeah, I think I voted for Nisqy. For me, it was between Elyoya and Nisqy because of what they bring to the teams. We've been talking about Mad Lions a lot recently, haven't we? But yeah, I just think if you look at what he has brought to this team and how much life he's given them, I think MVP is always subjective, like how you feel or what an MVP should be. It's the most valuable player, right? Do you think the most valuable player is the best player in the league? Do you think the most valuable player is what he brings to the team and actually gives the team to make the team what it is? So I voted for Nisqy because of basically the transition he made with Mad Lions, how much he's brought to Mad Lions from where they were and where they are now, from 7th to 1st. And how much he has made his team shine, how much Armwood looks like a good top laner. He looks like a really strong top laner because mid-jungle can play the sides. How Unforgiven can play things like Draven because mid-jungle can now play the sides, and how Elyoya can play carries every game or take a lot more resources than he did in Spring because he is the best jungler in the league, right? Or he's one of the best junglers in the league. So I think he is the foundation that Mad needed. So that's why he got my vote. I was unsure whether I should go for Elyoya as well because I'm a jungle main myself and he is really good. Yeah. And the way he plays and the way he passes is incredibly intelligent. There's a lot of metrics you can use to measure when you play against players. A lot of times, if an AD carry is really good and you play against him, you'll hear the pro on the enemy team say he's really hard to kill. And if he's really hard to kill, that means his positioning is just really good. Same thing for mid. It's like it's really hard to break his lane phase. That's another metric. For jungle, it's just he's never behind on camps, even though he's out ganking me. And it's the most annoying thing in the game because it's a cycle of he's out ganking me or on lanes faster than me, but I'm also even in CS and I don't get it. And I see that in Elyoya against every other jungler where I'm like, how is he pulling it off? So I was very, very close to voting for him too.
Yeah.
Nisqy was also my MVP. Like it was, I value MVP in terms of value, not best performer.
Yeah, most valuable individual player to the team.
And I get that it's a super controversial subject too. I know that different people rate MVP differently. And if you were to ask me, who do you think the best player in the league is, then it probably would have been Caps in my MVP.
Yep.
But that's not how I rate it. I rate it value to a team. So people are going to think I'm a Caps hater, which I'm definitely not. But he wasn't on my MVP list. My MVP list was actually Nisqy, Comp, and Neon. And I even debated putting Neon higher than Comp. But basically, I think that Comp made Rogue good this split when I think they should have been a lot worse than they actually ended up being. I think that his standalone performance in so many fights really stood out that he was worthy of being on the MVP list for me, which is why I was so shocked that he wasn't first All-Pro for AD carries. And then Neon, I just think was like super standout and really impressive. So Nisqy for the same reasons as Mark, but Nisqy, Neon, Comp.
I mean,
Comp, Neon with my 3.
3x, I think that I will acknowledge that anytime a player comes into a roster, they are at an advantage for MVP voting because the spotlight is immediately shined on them. Kikis when he joined Vitality, Gilius when he's joined countless different teams. It's just the nature of the beast because you're the immediate tangible change that is incredibly visible. Mickey X when he joined Excel, obviously a big moment, even though we were like thinking it was a shot calling and later it was revealed he was just a positive contributor.
Caps when he joined G2.
Caps when he joined G2. Like these are the easiest moments to be looked at for MVP because you are the thing that changed. You are the thing that is different. But I think that Nisqy was the thing that was different and he was really big to the team, clearly. I agree that El Yo-Yo also feels like he deserves that recognition. He got first All-Pro, though, and I think that is an accurate reflection of how good he is as a jungler. But we'll see, ultimately, who walks away with MVP. We're pretty united in that sentiment. We'll see what the teams and everyone else thinks in the votes when those finally come out. Now, though, time to talk to a man who had a bit of a rough season, but ultimately he made playoffs, he and the boys. Let's see what Razork has to say about Week 8, Fnatic, and the upcoming match versus Excel. Welcome, Razork. It's been a break week. I don't know if you guys actually spent any time taking a break or stepping away, but how is the mood in the Fnatic office, Fnatic house at this particular moment? It was a crazy, crazy Week 8.
I would say the mood is actually pretty good right now. I think before the Week 8, actually even before Week 7, we had a lot of pressure because I feel like we had G2, SK, or it was G2, BDS, and then the Super Week. So we actually knew that we had to win 4 out of the 5 games. But right now I feel like everyone is like a bit relieved from us making playoffs, and now we had actually 1 week and a half to scrim and prepare. So I would say the mood right now is pretty good. Yeah.
How do you take pressure? How do you deal with pressure? Do you feel like you play better under pressure? Because I have to say, I think your Week 8 specifically was a fantastic week by you. Do you thrive under pressure?
I think I perform better when I'm not under pressure and when I'm comfortable. But I feel like when you're under pressure, you are respecting more the enemies. And I feel like sometimes I make mistakes that I get over aggressive and I cannot disrespect the enemies. And then is when the coin flip Razork comes in. So I guess that's what made me shine more in the Super Week, or actually not make too many mistakes, I would say. But for the rest of my team, I think they actually perform better under pressure.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that. I like that it's not that it makes you stronger, it makes you a little more cautious. And is that something that you've been working on, this like level of aggression, this level of disrespect? Is that something that's been like coming along throughout the season? When did you like notice that this was an issue for you?
I mean, this is an issue since sometimes I play a lot for like with the solo queue mindset, and I'm like trying to outplay the enemy all the time. But when you play in official games, I mean, people are not as bad as in solo queue, right? So it's harder to outplay, and then you just look like a completely idiot. That's what sometimes it happens to me.
How was the mood in some of those games? Because obviously, like, I think when people look at your Week 8, Caedrel highlighted your individual performance was good. A lot of people are just going to look at the Zeri highlight clips. Like, what was the mood behind the scenes in those super late games, like the game against Vitality, where it's going super late, where it's super close? Like, when you came out of that, what did that feel like when you finally won that game and you guys were still like keeping the dream alive? Talking about those moments where it was these really clutch, crazy finishes.
I mean, I think in every game that is really important and there is like 50 minutes game or really long game, it's always like really high intensity, a lot of adrenaline coming in. And after you win that, you just feel really relieved. And even though after the Vitality win, we were not in playoffs, we still had to win against Misfits. Yep. It's like a huge relief and a huge adrenaline rush for everyone. Like, okay, we can actually make it. We are just one step away. And I think this motivates everyone to actually keep going. But I have to say that I never gave up on this group, even though we were in a really tough spot. We had like 30% chance to make playoffs. But I kept believing because I know what this group is capable of. And I think sometimes we just go mental boom and we are not able to perform. But overall, I think we are a good team.
Yeah, that's good to hear. The bounce back and such. A lot of the, out of curiosity, a lot of the kind of fan sentiment, just sentiment in general on socials was Zeri kind of helped you go across the finish line. How much do you attribute the Zeri games, the champion itself, to actually help you throughout that Super Week? Do you think if you had any other champion, it would have been a bit more difficult to close those games out?
I mean, for sure, I think Zeri is strong, but I don't think it's about the champ. Like, the enemy team didn't ban it. Elias Upset plays it pretty good, and I feel like we are playing around the champ really good too. I think Healy-Sang and Upset Comps are fantastic when they play this duo, and it's just a strength that we have. It can be with Zeri, it can be with any other hyper carry. So I think it doesn't have anything to do with the Zeri pick.
That's nice, because I suspect that it will be banned against you if I had to guess. But probably on a different note, you talked about the team just going mental boom sometimes. This was not an easy split for Fnatic at all. So I'm curious, in the weeks leading up to this final week, where you guys were able to like rally together and you had this big triumphant finish and made playoffs, what was actually going wrong behind the scenes? What in your perspective was the issue that was kind of leading to so many of these chaotic games, leading to so many of these losses that you guys experienced kind of throughout the season?
Well, I feel like we had some losses that they were because of drafts. There are some losses that were because we were disrespecting enemies or because the enemy were just straight up better than us. And I feel like most of the games were actually pretty close, and we threw a couple of them. But then we just realized that we are in a really tough position. And I feel like it happened in the spring split the same, that when this team starts losing or they are in a losing streak, they have a hard time getting their shit together and just bringing their confidence back. It's like we get drawn in our own shit, and then it's really hard to get out. But overall, we are doing much better, and I feel like we just need to keep the momentum up.
Yeah, I remember we had Perks on EUphoria in spring, and he was talking about the end of summer split playoffs, looking forwards. And I know we've talked about mentality a little bit already, but the last one I want to ask about mentality is Perks, I think, said summer playoffs, the better mental will win. Whichever teams implode will just get knocked out instantly. Is that something you agree with, Razork? Is that something you think about too, where summer is just, it's been such a long year that whoever can just keep the camaraderie will win?
Yeah, I agree. I think doesn't matter if you actually do really good in regular league and then just start winning. Last split, it happened to us. We were actually winning everything. We 3-1 G2, then we were 2-0 against Rogue, and then I don't know, we lost our minds and we lost 5 games in a row, and then we got kicked out of the playoff run. So I think that's very true. If we just are comfortable playing with your teammates, and then you just feel like you're a team and you're connected, then good things will happen.
Is this something that since spring, and I know you guys have struggled with it this season as well, is this something that like you worry about going into best of fives, that if you guys like come out with a strategy you've been working on and you lose 1 game or lose 2 games in a series, that it's going to be hard to rally to bring it back in a best of 5? Or do you feel like after week 8 that you've resolved a lot of those issues and that the mental is strong now? You got turbo mental now. Is this still something you think that's going to be tough for Fnatic, losing individual games in a best of 5?
Well, I can't really say at 100% because we didn't play any best of 5, but I can only talk about myself, and I feel like I improved much more about this, and I feel like I can reset my mind from one game to another. But I feel like everyone in the team has been working on this, and since the mood and environment in the team is much better, I hope this will be much better for best of 5.
Yeah, I hope so too. Obviously,
but I actually feel like we are gonna 1v9. We are gonna win every.
You're gonna win it all.
You're gonna win it. Okay,
all right. Take everyone out.
Okay. Wait. Then let's talk a little bit about the matchup versus Excel. Just some quick thoughts. How do you feel about going up against Marcoon? Thoughts on like what Excel do well. I don't want you to give away any strategies here, but just like thoughts on them as an opponent. How are you feeling? Maybe a prediction for that series as well. What are your thoughts about going up against Excel?
Well, I actually think Excel is a pretty good team. I think they have been really consistent during this regular split. They're actually 2-0 against us this split, so something that we didn't beat them once. So I think it will be close series, but I think we are gonna take them 3-1. I would say 3-1.
3-1.
3-1.
I mean, you were last year. You were one game away from Worlds. Now you're 2 best of 5s to Worlds. If you take down XL, who do you think you'll be playing against in the next round?
I think Misfits, and then we'll take Misfits out really fast, and then we'll go Worlds.
It's crazy, isn't it? Because you were on Misfits last year, and now you're on Fnatic, and there's a chance that you might play against them for a World spot. Do you feel like you're going to have extra pressure in that series if it is Misfits, or is it going to be anything personal?
No.
He's fishing.
I don't
just
mind.
fishing.
Well, I like it, Razork, honestly. So overall, ambitions for Fnatic. You're making it to finals. You're winning the whole season. Who are you facing in finals if it's going to happen?
I'm gonna face G2, I think.
Banger. We'll find out the rest of the bracket as the weeks go on, dude. I hope that the mental stays together. I hope things go swimmingly for the team. Thank you for coming on to talk to us just kind of briefly about the end of the split, everything that went on with Fnatic. And I hope that we can talk to you guys again soon, depending on how these best of 5 play out. But for now, I'll just wish you best of luck in the series versus Excel and in the scrims this week.
Thank you so much.
Keep that turbo mental, and we'll see you this weekend, dude.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. See ya.
Thank you.
See it. Thanks again to Razork for coming onto the show and talking to us, and Fnatic for lending us a bit of his time. It sounds like mental is everything as we look ahead towards next week in the series versus Fnatic and Excel playing 5th versus 6th elimination match. Initial thoughts on this one, gentlemen. Initial favorites. What do you think this is going to matter? What do you think is going to come down to this one? It's a new patch. Not that it matters much.
What is this going to come down to? I feel like everything in playoffs is always about jungle mid support. It's like, as much as I want to say...
Sorry, did you say playoffs or League of Legends?
Well, yeah, League of Legends as well. But I think in best of 5s, it's always jungle mid support because you have adaptation time where you can rewatch where you weren't setting up vision properly in early stages, right?
Sure.
I think Fnatic, to me, if you take away week 8, they would be the weaker early game team. But Razork was, as much as Upset had Zeri, Razork in that week 8 was phenomenal. Like, as much as he was dying a lot and he was sending it in the early game, he was the reason that their bot lane got ahead on Lucian Nami against Astralis.
Yeah.
He was the reason that the Zeri got ahead in their lane phases against Vitality and against Misfits. He was not sacrificing himself, but he was just playing through bot for only bot. And that's old school Fnatic playstyle, right? And it worked. Whereas XL lent more towards, we'll just play teamfight scaling. We will just not make early game mistakes because it's best of 1 and we don't want to throw the game. And we want to make sure that we can just win in the mid to late game against teams like
Patrick,
SK
kind of.
and trust Patrick, right? As much as he had like the Draven game and stuff like that as well. So it's a hard read for me because I feel like when you look at draft, you can assume, because Razork talked about like the drafts maybe were poor and such like this. Execution is always another big deal when it comes to drafts, right? If you draft like an Ornn, Jarvan, Talia, Lucian, Nami, you need to play for bot. But how do you play for bot? You play from mid to bot, right? You don't just play only to bot. You need to include your mid laner in that, right? When you're playing old school metas, when you're playing things like Jace and Pyke, you need to play for bot to top, right? You need to always join lanes together. And I feel like when it comes to playoffs, and when I look at Fnatic, I don't think they're joining lanes together very well. Humanoid is just on his island. Hopefully he doesn't die, and they're going to play 4 bot through bot, and that's it. And if bot lane gets ahead, then it feels like Fnatic can start to dictate the pace of the game and play for heralds and things like this, and get first on swaps, which is really important, I think, for Fnatic. Whereas XL do include their mid laner a lot. You think about the TF game, they're always playing for Nuke Duck. When he's on things like the Blanc, they're always playing for Nuke Duck. So I feel like that's something Fnatic need to have worked on in their break to include Humanoid more in a lot of the things that they do.
But how much trust do you have in Finn's flexibility? Because as a player, I think he's always been well known for having a relatively deep champion pool. But to me, he's someone that, I don't know, I guess, to put it bluntly, I just don't kind of trust him. To kind of 1v9 again. It's not that I think that he's a liability. I don't think he's bad. But it like most top laners, his most played the split have been GP, Gnar, and then Gwen. And then we've seen one Jax game from him. We've seen a KO game from him. I don't remember the Jax game, but I do feel like it was fairly recently, actually. But like, I know he's a player that can play carries. Like when he came into the league, his Kled and his Aurelia are the things that he was known for.
Kled,
right?
Aurelia, yep.
But this is the variable for me that I kind of have more faith in Fnatic with, which is Wunder, right? Because Wunder is a player, we heard Alfari talking about it when he was on the podcast, which is that of the top laners that he has the most respect for, it is Broken Blade and Wunder, and their ability to like not only play their lane really well, but to actually play carry champions and be players that can carry. And when we think about flexibility, and while I do agree with you that Fnatic are a little limited in how they don't really get everyone else involved, I do feel that early on in the season, we saw Fnatic finding a lot of success by playing through their top side of the map.
Yeah.
And if Herald right now is the consensus that it is a super important objective, then I feel like this is another tool that Fnatic have an edge over XL with, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too, because I think that while I agree that on paper I have a lot more faith in Wunder, like his two most successful champions this split are Gragas and Ornn.
Also true.
And don't get me wrong, he builds Gragas AP, it does a lot of damage, but in lane it's basically a tank in terms of functionality.
When you talk about Finn as perhaps a liability, do you think...
I didn't say liability.
No,
you said
liability. I said liability. No, yeah,
when you
I
look
know.
at Finn as utter dumpster trash.
Yeah, this absolute worst top player in the league. He's going to be so useless.
Finn was terrible. When those words left your mouth.
Rewind. Yeah,
when I talk about Finn, what is it?
Maybe Wunder will have the upper hand in that matchup. What do you think about Humanoid in playoffs? Because the way I see Humanoid is throughout the whole split, he just dies a lot to every single gank that anyone does. That's basically the idea around Humanoid. But in week 8, when this might sound stupid, but when he plays champs with mobility, where he actually can't die, it looks like the game is already a lot more stable. I'll give you an example.
Sure.
LeBlanc, Ari, champs where you can't actually die because you have so much mobility to work with. But then you look at the Talia game against Misfits and he can't really get himself involved in anything.
What I will say is that in many ways, Humanoid reminds me of Perks. And I'm not saying that Perks of this split, I'm saying Perks of old, but Perks never won an MVP during the regular season. But in playoffs, people would often sit there and say, this man should be MVP. And it's mainly because Perks was a player that thrived under pressure. He was a player that really stepped up. And Humanoid to me is someone that, like, it's weird that fans are very attached to this. They always bring up the, like, Humanoid said in an interview once that he treats it like a job, right? And they're like, that's such a bad thing because he doesn't have the same passion or the drive. To me, that seems like that he treats the regular season like a balance, He puts time and effort that he needs in order to perform at a good level. But then when it matters most, when it's crunch time, that's where I have faith in Humanoid. So I will admit a lot of my arguments right now are I believe Wunder and Humanoid will step up as players when a thing like a best of 5 comes in. But a lot of that is based on my history of these players compared to an XL roster where a lot of these players have often been knocked out early in playoffs. Outside of like Nuke Schalke, of course, where he,
and Mickey,
and Mickey X is a player. Like these are also standouts, but Fnatic just has more pedigree and more history of individuals really stepping up when the crunch time comes.
And I think I hate it, but it feels like that's where we end up with the
Plot
G2s
armor.
and Fanatics is the
Yeah,
plot
it's
armor.
kind of
And
like
it,
the
and it
plot
worked
armor.
in
And
week
it's not
8, and it's just a thing because the reality is these players are so highly variable, and this org is historically so highly variable, regular season,
for sure.
playoffs. And we heard from Razork in the interview earlier, he talked about 2 things. He talked about mental and he talked about momentum. Wants to keep momentum going. Mental is the big thing that he thinks is really important, as Caedrel kind of highlighted. And obviously a thing that we're looking at, as he talked about, is one of the things that was a struggle for the team in the regular season. And you're right. Humanoid is a player who's talked about it. He's sometimes isn't as motivated to play League, but we know when there's a fire lit under him, when competition is real and there's something on the line, like going to Worlds, like an elimination best of 5, we know he's a player who steps up. It's a similar story for Wunder. And it's not to discredit their performance in any other part of their career, but like that's what we're betting on that. This intangible factor of him just turning it on.
And that's the thing. And I think that if you just purely look at regular season performances, this is a close game. Right, or series, rather.
Yeah,
and I think
absolutely.
that's the fairest way to look at it. The biggest thing for me, from an objective standpoint, is that XL came into the season looking very good, right? They came in with this approach of, we're going to be very early game focused, we're going to leverage our lane prio to be able to transition this to everywhere else on the map, and the way in which Marcoon was working with Nuke Duck looked flawless, Mickey X was everywhere on the map, but it felt like that never grew.
No.
It felt like that was their performance, and then as other teams started to catch up, they weren't one step ahead, they actually just stayed the same, and they kind of plateaued towards later off into the split. And like their second half, if I remember correctly,
it's
was just
abysmal.
like, it was abysmal.
Yeah.
Like they went on a 5-game losing streak to then win out in Super Week. And they ended up going 4-5 in the second half, which, to be honest, wasn't even that much better than their first half. So maybe I even overhype how good their first half actually was when they ended up losing to SK and Astralis in the first half as well.
To be
so,
fair,
like,
it was a lot of the reason we thought that their first half was good was because of those super clean, controlled early
It's
games.
true.
And when other people were looking lost, and that again, when consistency wasn't there, it felt like Excel against top teams, for the most part, was a rock in the early game in a way a lot of other teams weren't. And so when you look at just the win record, I think you're right. We look back at this and we go, wait, shit, am I misremembering what felt like a really good
because they were
first half of the
5-2. They
season?
were 5-2.
Yeah.
They were, and that's why we ended up losing that bet, which we still need to pay off though. But but like coming into week 4, we were like, oh, they've got Astralis and SK. This team will be 7-2 at the end of the first half, and then they lose those 2 games. I'm like, okay, it's an off week, and then they come back, beat Misfits, beat Fnatic. Now they're 7-4, and you're like, okay, XL is clearly a good team. But yeah, I just feel like that they didn't get better. I don't know.
And I also think Mickey slumped really hard. Like he had some games which he was on the brink of solo losing, the Nami games, Nautilus games.
I mean, Mickey and Hillisang, it's so weird to me.
It is weird, yes.
Because I didn't put them in my All-Pro, and that felt wrong.
It did feel wrong.
It felt very wrong, but I think they both did not have good seasons. They're on paper, if you looked at the start of this season, they are should be the 2 best supports in our league, and Kaiser was always the guy in third behind them, and there were some other players
outside of when
up.
Kaiser was winning.
So that when Kaiser was winning,
yeah.
Targamas, whatever, like these are the guys that you looked at to be the best in their respective positions, alongside Kaiser. That's our clear
exactly.
top 3,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
this season they just
There's
it
one.
was rough.
horrible split indeed. And just looking at the regular season, XL's 2-0 against Fnatic.
Yep.
I'm looking at the games, and they're very quick games. 26, 29 minutes. These were games that are quick, but I'm looking at the drafts, and I'm thinking I'm not really surprised. They're playing Fnatic's playing LeBlanc into Lissandra. They're playing Draven into Braum. Finn got GP twice in the Gragas matchup. They're playing like Vex Wukong in the Telia Trundle meta. So I don't want to read into it too much because I feel like their drafts were weak given the current meta and the fact that XL was just probably slightly ahead of it.
And I don't know what the Azir is doing in scrims, and it does have mobility, which stops, in theory, Humanoid from dying. But like, I don't think either of these teams were amazing at drafting in the latter half of the season. But I will say that in that capacity, I have more faith in Excel than I do in Fnatic, because Fnatic just looked like they were scrambling in the last week to just find anything that would work for them, and that was Zeri. And like, I think the just ban Zeri and Fnatic are lost is probably like oversimplified. Like, is it a blow to Fnatic? Yeah, but it's a blow to any team. The champion's nuts, obviously.
So it sounds like, though, I do find it funny that, like, originally we were like, this should be like a pretty interesting matchup, and all we've done is spew off negatives.
Yeah.
But I will say is like, and I think it's fair. I don't want to like, because obviously right now these are our 5th and 6th.
This is 5th and 6th,
right?
And
so
it was a tough race.
And yeah, it was a tough race.
Position.
It was super tough, right? So both of these teams limped their way into playoffs.
Yep.
So to have low expectations of them, I think is very reasonable. Right now, I think that everyone rates G2 as the clear favorites. And a large part of that is because of their 8-1 run in the second half, right? And we'll get onto G2 later. But I think that the important thing is to kind of look at the standouts. And what we can say is that Upset was someone that stood up. He was playing Zeri, yes, but he still clutched up when he needed to. And I think that that's really important. And I think Patrick did the same thing, in my opinion. So I think that we have 2 phenomenal AD carries that weren't on the All-Pro, which was a very contentious AD carry. I think our AD carries are very stacked here in LEC. We've got a lot of good ones. And I think that that role is going to be really pivotal. I ultimately think that a lot of these games will come down to team fights. I don't have faith in Fnatic's early game to consistently convert those leads into wins. I do believe that I wouldn't be surprised if XL went for more of a scaling approach, which does mean that it'll then be front-to-back team fights, 2 AD carries, which one can perform better. And maybe things will change, but that would be my primary focus on like the things that stand out and the things that separate them.
I mean, that's the banger, Matt. I mean, Upset versus Patrick.
Quite an old matchup
The OG
now.
battle.
Bear in mind, Patrick was benched by Upset on OG.
I know. Ooh, drama.
And let's also not forget that Patrick made it to a final. Yeah, but Patrick made it to a final, then he was benched, and then they finished 10th. Was that the 10th split?
Yeah, it was.
Maybe the 7th
2019.
split?
No, they didn't finish 10th.
Maybe
That
it
was
wasn't that
2019
year.
summer. That was the year after they finished.
It was the year
after.
2020 summer.
Yeah.
Anyway, Hillisang
But there's
versus Mickey.
beef, boys, and if there's not, I'm making it.
Bot lane is a banger for me for sure, and I want to see if I want to see what both these bot lanes look like, because they feel like on paper. There was a point early in the season where we were interviewing people on the show, and they were like, "Oh yeah, no, Patrick Mickey X is the best bot lane in the league." And then last year it was like, "Well,
That's
Upset
true.
Hillisang probably are our best bot lane in the league, despite the success of Mad. And then this year, it's obviously, or this season, it's like, wah, wah, you know, like, you know, just rough. It was a rough. So I'm excited to see.
Oh, it's hard to say.
It's hard to judge.
It's hard to, I think this will be a 5-game series.
My gut says Fnatic, and but the only reason is because of what are intangibles. And I wholeheartedly hold my hand up and say it's not great analysis. It's based on the history of Humanoid and Wunder as players. I have faith in their ability to improve pretty dramatically between the end of regular season and the best of 5.
It's necessary analysis in the sense that it's like LAN versus playing on stage. Like, it does affect people's performance, and it feels bad because it feels so much less. It's just not as strong as some of the other things, but it's necessary analysis in this case. And the reality is, Humanoid and Humanoid especially, and Wunder as well, are players who historically have gone through peaks and troughs, but have more often than not performed when it matters. And we look back to Fnatic versus G2 last split, before, you know, G2 make their run with the Ahri Jarvan and the Ornn on the top side. And those games were literally G2 drafting entirely to shut Humanoid's LeBlanc down 4 games in a row, and him beating them anyway. Yeah. Except in the Karma game where they just did Karma Hecarim, and that shit was nasty. Like, this is a player that cannot be underestimated in a tense game or series. Now, he could just as easily show up and play like trash. It could happen. He could show up, he could get caught, he could die too much, it could fall apart. Or we could see the Humanoid that we saw in that series, the Humanoid that we saw all of last year, who was the best performing mid laner when Caps on that Reckless roster was struggling. And that's the thing that's hard. It's really hard to predict where Fnatic are going to end up. But I think when we
my gut is Fnatic right now. My gut is 3-2, 3-1 Fnatic, but I wouldn't be surprised if XL beat Fnatic in this best of 5.
I'm also going Fnatic because I think it's XL probably have a slight advantage if Humanoid or Wunder don't step it up. Fnatic can go mental boom. I don't want to count on that in either but way.
Also, like, crap drafts, like, you make a valid point that, like, it wouldn't surprise me if XL come up with something clever for these best of 5s.
XL have looked a little bit more flexible, but then again, a lot of their, like, for example, Mickey, when he's playing things like the Bard and the Nami and the Nautilus, he does not look comfortable. Even the Tahm Kench, he was dying to gank, so
which is crazy when he was famous for his Bard when he first joined the league.
So hyped for that Bard.
His best champs have been Renata Yumi, and I think they're both banned in this series, so I'm a bit worried for XL, but I'm going to say XL 3-2. Thinking about it more, I was on the Fnatic train a little bit earlier on in the day, but thinking about it more, just the way Fnatic play their lanes, I think XL are just slightly better at playing more cohesively as a team. I think when you look at Fnatic, they just... You're right in saying when they play topside, it works. You know, it's 2v2s. You know, when they play for mid and they play for Humanoid, in the rare cases that it happens when he's on the Blanc, you know, Humanoid can get ahead. But it's never like... To me, I've never really looked at Fnatic and thought, oh, Humanoid's roaming bot and Wunder's going to take over midwave and they're going to 4-man dive for upset, you know? Or, you know, Humanoid's going to roam top, Wunder's on a champ that can get ahead and they can actually dive top 3-man and get ahead by diving top and getting a kill.
That's very fair.
They never really come together as a unit, and I feel like they're playing their own games, and Razork's just being pulled around a lot. But when Razork can do what he wants, he can get them leads by himself, and he doesn't really need to have that team play, but I don't think that's very reliable in a best of 5.
I'm with you. I think that it's weird where if we take history out of the equation, XL are absolutely the safer bet. When you add in the
plot armor,
all the crazy and the plot armor, if that's what you want to call it, and the history of clutch players on these teams amping up their performances, Humanoid, Wunder on that list. Hillsang probably also on that list. Upset, sometimes good, sometimes bad, so I don't want to just throw them in there too. But it's close. It's close. I don't want to spend too much more time on this
we're in agreement. It's close. We're saying Fnatic, you're saying XL. I get it. It makes sense. I understand your argument. Will I call you biased a little bit?
Yeah. Only one of these teams sends you your paycheck. So, hard to say. I'm never going to undercut you like that. Unless you say some dumbass shit like the spirit of the team just feels stronger.
The power of friendship.
The power of friendship. Yeah, if you come out here with that shit, then I'm calling you biased. Otherwise, you're good.
But I think this is one of the close series.
Yeah,
I think Mad Rogue is also probably one of the next close series.
Let's talk about Mad Rogue.
Let's do it.
Mad Rogue. This series.
A rivalry born from the ashes.
Born from the ashes. When G2 and Fnatic fell, it was Mad and Rogue who bore the torch.
Just like in the rap battle as we predicted.
Prophetic rap battles by Vedius and Drakos. There it is.
I think that this series is one I'm actually looking the most forward to.
Yes.
Mainly because I think that
Do you know who's casting it? Are we casting it? Who's casting it?
I don't know.
I don't know either. That's not-
Wait, is Rogue Mad the first one? It's Friday, right? Rogue
don't
Mad is
know.
Friday. I'm pretty sure it's Friday.
All right.
Rogue, you should know this as the host, Daniel. Come on. Get it
Wait,
together.
you have
Get your act
just as
together.
much access to Google. in
I'm
front
not
of
the
you
host.
than I
Yeah.
do. Well, then don't. You can't just call
You
me
took
out
my
like
chair.
that.
What do you want from me?
It's my chair. You borrowed it for a week. Mad Rogue is on the Friday.
That's
Yes,
what I thought.
thank you.
So I'm not casting that. I'm on the analyst desk for that. Which probably means one of you two is casting it. Maybe
Fantastic.
both.
gotta stop
Stop
dabbing.
dabbing, because the podcast listeners also can't hear your dab, okay?
Wait, hold on, hell yeah. I got to ASMR a
Stop
dab
it.
real quick.
Yeah. Rogue versus Mad, I think as a matchup is really interesting, mainly because when we think about Rogue, historically, what they were super well known for was their super reliable laners. And then when it was Inspired, they played for Inspired. And then when it was Malrang played for the strong laners.
Yep.
And their whole early game approach and why it was so effective in the regular season in particular was because it was like talent that was enabled. And then they would consistently pick good drafts that meant that they always had options. So even if they fell behind in the early game, it didn't matter because they had ways to come back, but often they would get leads in the early game and they would dominate through that and they would snowball their leads through good map play. This season, we have not seen a lot of that. We've seen some of it, but not a lot of it. And you contrast that to how Mad get early game leads, and it's actually very much described as how Caedrel describes it, which is very much, we play through a lane, typically mid, and then we transition that to somewhere else on the map, usually mid to bot, mid to top, whatever. But they're both like pretty effective early game teams. Just the way in which they play through their early game is quite different.
Yeah.
And I think that with the 2-week break, I'm very curious as to how the teams have adapted and shifted, or if they have at all, or will we see the same performance that we got from them in the regular season?
I think
don't
based
know.
on regular season performance for me, Mad would still be the favorites here because you talked
Sure.
about that early game strength and the fact that that was absent in this regular season. Not that it's not something that can't be fixed.
And
in
it
a
also,
period
it
of
was
time.
there at times, for
Yes,
sure. Like,
sure.
I remember casting them and being like, oh, this is the rogue of old. This is the rogue that would, like, dominate.
Yeah.
And it was so funny to me when we saw them lose to BDS, but beating other teams. Like, they dumpstered Matt. Let's not forget that, right? Like, Malrang made some crazy plays. Malrang was the guy that did the level 2 gank top, right? He did red to level 2 gank top.
Yep.
I think it was against Misfits.
I mean, to be fair, LEA also did red to level 2 gank bottom in like a week prior.
True.
They're both just like, I don't know who's
Level
passing
2
what.
ganks.
Yeah, it was absolute psycho trundle ganks.
But yeah, I think that their early games are going to be explosive, and it's going to be pretty interesting seeing how they stack up.
Rogue to me is, I think, the one team in playoffs which is the hardest to read because of how inconsistent their last few weeks were.
Yeah.
Because they went on this massive win streak in the first half.
Yep.
But then I feel like they struggled to transition to this. I think they got sucked into the Mad meta, the LPL meta of like Talia and moving around the map.
We
and
did
they
talk
got,
about that, yeah.
They got sucked into it a bit. And although I think they finally kind of, polished it out towards the later half of the split, I think that's one of the big reasons why they started losing. You know, you look at their last 5 games, 6 games, they've lost to Astralis. They've lost to SK. They've lost to BDS. But they've beaten Vitality, XL,
They also lost
and
to
Mad.
Rogue.
So this team...
Wait, Rogue lost to Rogue?
Rogue lost to Rogue?
No, I thought you were talking about Mad.
No,
continue,
Rogue, yeah.
continue.
So the Rogue in the last 5 games have beaten BDS and SK. They've lost to BDS, SK, and Astralis, and they've beaten XL, Mad Lions, and Vitality, which makes absolutely no sense to me. And I just shows how it's so hard to read this team because I feel like they're quite inconsistent in these best of ones, right? What am I going to pinpoint it to? It's quite hard. Some of them are drafts. You know, you see some of the drafts where they're picking like the Sejuani things into Tom Kench on the supports.
Oh man, we hate that draft. That's got to be our most hated draft. I brought that draft up
one.
at least. I was trying not to bring it up, and then you brought it. Like I hate that draft.
And then they played the Kalista Taric into Rakan Sivir, which I'm not really sure what Taric's supposed to achieve against Rakan Sivir, but I can kind of get it. You're picking Taric into the Wukong, but then they had really no damage when you're playing in Swain, Wukong, Akali.
Yeah.
So some of it I facilitate the draft, some of it I facilitate the execution in team fights, but if you ask me how Rogue will perform, I really have no clue. I think they could either get stomped in this series or they just show up big, and I'm not sure which one it's going to be.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm despite the fact that Rogue did beat Mad most recently, I'm still favoring Mad a little bit more. I think Elyoya is our strongest jungler in terms of what he can do and how he can play the game. I think that, like, obviously Malrang was on a tear last season and definitely the stronger performer, probably the strongest jungler in our league last season up until the Yankos playoffs run. And I think the way that he and Nisqy play together is solid. Now, that said, Larssen has been stepping up. Larssen had some great moments. But as you said, it's just so hard to like really concretely say anything about Rogue when we've seen both sides of the coin. Whereas Mad, yes, they did have like 6-4, 6-4. Ultimately, it
6-3,
feels
6-3.
6-3. Excuse me. It just feels like they were the most consistent team we had, and they feel like the most concrete team in playoffs next to G2, who are coming in off the 8-1.
I mean, it's fair. And I know we have an interview coming up, but I think that I've lost my point. My brain just went blank, and I was like, I had this great point about Rogue. Oh, Larssen. That's what I wanted to talk about. Larssen was someone, for me, that I thought got snubbed a little bit in the All-Pro, because I felt like that he should have been the third best. But then I thought more about it, and I was like, this is a very big moment for Larssen, again, mainly because in playoffs, he's actually one of the players that fans typically associate with being that joker, right? But also, there's been a big debate via broadcast as well. Like, I know I've talked about it, which is that your champ pool is limited, right? Mm-hmm. And in a meta, which is very much about like the Ahri, Lissandra, Talia, like these champions, these champions that are high agency, big playmakers, big roamers, that has never really been Larssen's playstyle. And now it kind of has to be. Now he needs to show that he can play these champions. And his Talia was put under criticism this split. I was someone that called out some of his Talia games. And I think that he needs to demonstrate to everyone that he is capable of playing these champions, he is proficient at them, and that he's not just an Azir Victor player. Mm-hmm. And I think that if Rogue really want to stand a chance at winning this split, that flexibility in mid is really important. I trust his Sylas. I've seen his Sylas. I know he can play it. I know he's a good Sylas player. But there's a lot of other champions in the meta right now. And I think a lot of pressure is going to be on his shoulders to actually step up, because especially given how Nisqy feels super comfortable in this meta, I think that mid difference could be the decider in the outcome of this match.
Yeah, I think looking at the meta, just for quick hits, it looks pretty much the same for mid. Jungle as well looks quite similar. There's some changes to like top, especially for like carry tops in the LPL and things like this, but all in all, things will stay roughly the same, maybe a bit more range sports, really high prio on Renata and Yuumi. Kennen is really strong again because of the buffs, so blind pick Kennen is like the go-to, because the problem you had with top was blind picks, it was like the Gwen, RGP, then you need another blind pick, Sejuani. Now there's a Yone counter, so now it's Ornn. Well, now it's Renekton because Yone is also good into Ornn, and you can play things like Camille and Gnar again. So then now we've gone to Kennen, but I don't know, LPL and Arla still blinding Fiora. I was going to say about Mad Lions. I actually think Mad Lions are their own worst enemy at times. Yes. They overdive way too much. And I feel like, I don't know if they are rushed into things or they overforce to the point where they get the kills, they get the lead, and they overstay expecting more and they're greedy. Or they think that maybe in some games they're getting outscaled and they have to overforce these plays to make sure they can get like decisive leads so they can close out against enemy comp. But we were talking about it yesterday about like the G2 one where they're just full sending it top onto a Gwen. When they see Trundle Lulu right behind him, they know Ahri has TP. Worst case, it's a 4v4, which is not great when you're all flashing on top of this Gwen and everything backfires, right? And it also happens in enemy junglers a lot. They just overchase. So I feel like Mad Lions need that one player.
Even early on the season, we talked about it with Nisqy, right? When that Elder Dragon, when he got stolen, he was even saying like, I don't think starting that Elder was the correct play. The fact that we rushed it down, he was like, sometimes in these situations, we all commit to a call, which is good, but sometimes we don't necessarily think the call through and evaluate it, right?
They need someone to just calm them down and like pull them back, especially in a best of 5. Like if you're up at 2 games, jitters can hit you. Even if you're in 2-2, it's a lot of pressure. They just need someone that can just reel in the reins a bit and just be like, let's just chill. Like we got a kill. Let's just back off and not overforce too much. That's, I think, their biggest weakness at times.
For sure.
All right. Well, before we make our predictions for who's going to win this series, why don't we hear what Comp has to say about this upcoming matchup? A little bit ahead of season, a little bit from Comp. Let's head over there now with Vedius and myself. Bye, Caedrel. Welcome, Comp, to the Euphoria podcast.
Hello.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
It's good to have you, good sir. We were just talking about your matchup versus the Mad Lions. You guys obviously have a lot of history now, Rogue and the Mad Lions, in terms of the amount of times that you faced. How are you feeling right now about that best of 5? What are your thoughts on Mad at this time?
Well, I think Mad is the type of team that they're kind of predictable, but I think the same could go for us, honestly. I just think they have this like one way to go, like playstyle that I think it should just remain the similar in playoffs as they did in regular season. But it worked out for them pretty well, right? So of course they should stick to it. I just think it's like it should be one of the teams that should be like the easiest to prepare into a best of 5, in my opinion.
Interesting. Because, like, I guess you would talk, I guess the predictability element is their approach to the early game, I guess, because typically you see Nisqy often on a champion that can get prio and mid, look to roam, affect sides, and often they'll either play towards top or bot, and you've probably been the recipient of someone who's had that 4-man dive bot at like level 4, level 6, level 8, and so on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would expect them to play like this still, but I don't know. The thing is, we're kind of used to play versus playstyle, like from scrims and everything versus other teams.
Right.
So I honestly respect this playstyle that they try to do. I mean, they've said it themselves that they are really looking up to LPL and the way they play. But there are for sure some little details that are for sure missing right now in LEC that we don't have. But I honestly respect their playstyle. I think it's actually the best way to play League of Legends right now. So it should be a fun best of 5.
So when we talk about, when you think about this series at all, do you think back on any of like the historic Rogue versus Mad series? Like, does any of that baggage weigh on you? Is there more pressure on you? Because obviously, on a broadcast level, we've been trying to build the Mad Rogue rivalry. But is that something that you feel when you play? Is like there anything special about playing Mad as an opponent, or are they just kind of another team that you have to play in a best of 5?
Yeah, so to me specifically, it's not really special. But I remember exactly last year when they were playing the finals in Spring Split, I was actually chilling at my home since I was benched. And I remember exactly, I was like watching the finals, how it went from like, it goes like 2-0, right, at the beginning. And I'm like, okay, it's an easy 3-0. And then I watched the third game, and it's actually 3-0. And then this thing happens on bot with Caitlyn, and I'm like, oh no, man, there's no way. And then basically the series turns around and goes to game 5, and I'm still watching. There's like 7k gold lead, I feel like, in 20 minutes or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they end up losing. And man, I mean, the thing is, I was not supporting someone specifically. I was just watching the series, but I felt so bad for the guys. I remember like going on Twitter and like texting like Inspired and Hans, man. Like I was like sitting on my couch watching the game, but I felt so bad for you. I'm actually like, I'm so sorry. I hope you feel better and all of this shit. So yeah, I mean, to me, there is not like, I don't feel anything specifically when I face Mad, but I can really understand some of the boys from last year, how they can feel when they face this team. So
it's for the boys at this point. It's for the boys.
Yeah, it's for the boys indeed. Yeah, I will try to 3-0 them for the boys.
That's fair. So, Comp, you're someone that I have rated very highly this split. You were my number 1 All-Pro, and I have you on my MVP list. The main reason for that is because I felt that Rogue as a team has not actually been super consistent. And I think that you guys have stolen a couple of wins that you probably shouldn't have won. In particular against Mad, like in the early weeks. I still remember that Elder Dragon that you stole. So what do you think about your performance? And then translate that from how you think Rogue as a team is playing like this split.
So for my performance, I feel like, as you said, due to the fact that we have been playing worse this regular season than the previous one, I felt like I was not signing as much as the last one, because in the end it's like a team game, and especially my role, it shines even more when we play better as a team, right? It gives me more opportunities for team fights and all of this stuff. But I tried my best to like be as consistent as I could this split, and I think I did a pretty good job in the end. But overall as a team, I feel like we had a lot of issues this regular. The thing is, I feel like our early game was like so bad. And we're just not doing regular things that every top team should do. Like, I think basically we were more inconsistent at the first 8 minutes of the game, like when the Herald timing was coming and how we're like playing around Heralds and stuff. And I remember like the first weeks we were just losing every Herald. And it's not like we're like losing it because we're getting something very big on the other side of the map. We're like losing it because we're just very slow of like how we're playing, you know?
Yeah.
Like laning phase wise and everything. So to be fair, I think we have improved quite a lot, especially in the Super Week. I think we have shown a way better like Rogue than the previous split. And I honestly still have high ambitions for playoffs, even though honestly this regular season sucked, especially for Rogue, right? It's like the type of team that always finishes first. And honestly, after that 7 winning streak, even though we went 0-2 in the week 1, we honestly thought we would just make Worlds because of the 4-seed thing. So it was really sad to like not make Worlds because we're losing to teams like Astralis and SK. Not that I disrespect those teams. It's more like I think we are just better, you know, so we should win those games. Yeah.
I like hearing the honesty in that answer and kind of reflecting back on what was a difficult season for Rogue. When you look ahead to playoffs, what do you think are like the biggest issues that you guys are focusing on right now when it comes to getting ready for best of fives and making sure that we see the best version of this team coming into the series versus Mad?
I think not specifically just for us, but I feel like the way League of Legends is right now and the way they buff the Herald, especially in the early game, I feel like the first 8 minutes of the game are actually the most important of how you can tell an early mid game will go. I mean, in late game, of course, everyone can win, right, if the game is even and it's only just team fights. But I feel like what we focus now as Rogue is just having very stable laning phase and looking to just play very smart around the waves and contest Heralds, basically. I mean, the goal is, okay, guys, we contest Herald, and if we don't contest Herald, we better have a really good reason that we don't, and we need to get something. We need to get something very good, you know, because giving Herald nowadays and not doing anything, it can automatically just completely destroy all your game. It's too powerful right now, I feel like.
Interesting.
So yeah.
So you feel that the dragon buffs weren't enough to compensate for the trade?
It's mostly like you can always, of course, like if you give Herald and let's say you trade it for denying 2 waves at bot lane and you get also a Drake, it's pretty decent trade, right?
Right.
But it's as I said, like I feel like at least in the regular season, we were not doing that, right? We were not fast enough to realize that, okay, guys, we cannot contest Herald for whatever reason. I don't know, maybe their champs are just better and all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think we're just way more aware now. And I think we will be way more prepared, especially in the best of 5 for this type of stuff.
That's cool. So when we look at how competitive the regular season was, a lot of it we tie to teams being pretty inconsistent. When we look at playoffs now and the fact that everyone has a lot of time to prep, who do you think is the scariest team coming into playoffs? And I'd be interested if you think there are any teams that like we should keep an eye out for, like maybe a Misfits, maybe an XL or something like that, that maybe using this time could actually be a much bigger threat in playoffs than perhaps they showed during the regular season.
I see. So I think for me, or us personally, it should be honestly G2, the team that we are mostly looking at in playoffs. I just think it's always the team to prepare the hardest for in the best of 5 especially. But about like watching a team, like for viewers and everything, I actually think it should be Fnatic, even though they had all this terrible like regular season and stuff. I think like it's the type of team that I think will honestly work the hardest right now because they knew the position that they were in regular, right? So I don't think they want to feel that again in playoffs. So I'm pretty sure it should be the team that most people should look out for.
Yeah. To kind of wrap us up before we let you go and get back to your week of thrilling playoff scrims, 12-15, I would love to know. We usually ask players, but I think it's you guys are winning the split, right? I assume Rogue is going for winning the split. Yes.
Yes.
Easy.
Yes.
All right, because I got to ask that question, but you're going to give me that answer anyway. So let's just get that out of the way. What team are you playing in the finals in Malmo? Who are you facing down in the finals?
Honestly, I see a scenario where it's Fnatic versus G2 for who enters the final. So I'll probably say G2.
Fnatic versus G2 to see who face you in the finals.
Damn.
I like that. That's spicy. Rogue. That means you're going through the winners bracket if you're the boys waiting.
Yeah.
I think the boys and me are going to the winners bracket, yes.
Winners bracket. So you're going to beat Mad, and then I'm assuming you think beat G2, and then you're just waiting in the finals. That's the plan?
That's the goal, yeah.
So I did have one more question as well before we do let you go. Can I just confirm, have you ever been to Worlds before, Comp?
I have not, no.
So the probability of there's 4 out of the 6 teams in playoffs will go to Worlds. So is there any I'm curious as to what that's like for you because you've been competing for a while now and your chances are looking good and you'd get to go to North America with a lot of very strong teams this year if you manage to qualify. So what's going through your head right now with regards to the potential qualification for Worlds?
Yeah, so honestly, if you asked me this question 2 or 3 years ago when I was way younger and I was aiming for LEC and all of this, I think I would kind of be shaking. Not that right now I'm not hyped or anything. It's just I've come more to the reality of how it works and everything. And it's just, I'm very happy, honestly. And I'm really looking forward to just go to Worlds and face all of those Korean and Chinese players.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm just really looking forward to it. I think it should be a really nice experience for everyone. And it should honestly it should stay forever as a memory, right? I think it's such a special thing to go to, even though many people go for many years in a row, right? Since it's my first year, it's way more special for me. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Assuming
yeah.
you can qualify.
Well, yeah.
There is
We'll see.
still
Once
that
that-
hope,
once-
but-
Assuming, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Assuming we don't lose all games and Misfits beat G2, yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's the one.
That's the one. All right. Well, best of luck.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for talking
Thank
to
you
us.
so much, guys.
Good luck.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, good luck in the series versus Mad. We'll see you this weekend. And yeah, enjoy the week of scrims. Thanks, man.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. See you.
See ya.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Comp. It was
A lot of great insight.
a lot of great insight. I like
I've
yeah.
reappeared.
Thank you, Caedrel, for coming back. Appreciate it. I wasn't sure, you know. But
I'll always
I'm
come
glad
back
you're
for you.
I know. Thank you.
But I liked what Comp was saying about their first 8 minutes, about how he's like, he blames a lot of their inconsistencies on basically their first 8 minutes of the game just
Yeah.
being bad now. Like the reason why they haven't been able to consistently play around Herald has been a problem. And also the fact that he called Mad predictable is not something that I thought about, but it does make sense from his perspective, right?
Yeah.
Because their approach to the game, like we memed about it on cast, but like the Mad Lions ward that everyone in the league started copying,
Level
where
wards.
the one at Red Buff that
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
always did,
Yeah.
you know?
I think it makes sense in a way where you know they will do something early. You just need to make sure you stop any kind of variables. So you ward level 1, you figure out where Elio is pathing to. Be careful on lanes early ward. Track him, know where he is. That's what side of the map Nisqy will move to. Make sure you cross map where you have a play to defend, right? I guess is
Yeah.
the way that he defines readable.
Yeah. I'll also say that usually Rogue is like first top 2 in the regular season, and then they suck somewhere in playoffs. I'm not going to say they bomb out in playoffs because that's not fair. They've actually had a lot of deep runs. They usually just
They
there's
have,
one
yeah.
series where it
They
usually falls apart.
consistently finish top 3.
Yeah, which is, again, all it needs for Worlds. Worlds is important. You talked to Comp about it. He's excited. Worlds on the table. Not locked yet, but on the table for Rogue. But I'm wondering if now this is the key to their success. Now because I think losing in the regular season, finding out these issues, identifying these issues earlier on makes this week going into playoffs that much more focused,
Maybe, yeah.
that much more productive. So again, that's kind of tinfoil hatty, definitely in the realm of analysis. It's definitely not super concrete, but I'm curious if that actually is a boon to Rogue, the fact that they have something clear to focus on, and it's not just, well, we're killing it in best of ones. Let's see what it looks like when it goes into best of fives. But it's going to be tough. This is a game that's going to be decided, I think, probably as Comp talked about the importance of the first 8 minutes, but these are games that are going to feel pretty decided in those first 8 to 10 minutes, short of really crazy late game team fights. But both of these teams have thrown big leads a lot.
Yeah.
This is probably the most volatile. Like this is a series that I believe will go to 5 games, not because one team is not clearly better, but because both teams probably cannot 3-0 the
Okay,
other.
I'm not. No, I don't think that's true. I think they're both good teams, and I think that the break will do them both a lot of favors. But I very much agree with everything that Caedrel said. I think that Mad during the regular season has been their own worst enemy a lot of the times. But the fact that they haven't clearly fixed that is something to be a little concerned about. But the inconsistency of Rogue in terms of their drafting, the fact that I think that they haven't been as comfortable in the current meta as other teams have, especially Mad Lions. I would rate Mad Lions favorites, and I would probably predict them to win. But again, it's another situation where I wouldn't be surprised if Rogue won. Like, I can see a world where we know Freddie, once he's given a bit more time, comes up with very good drafts.
Yep.
And we know that this team is actually quite flexible. Like, Odoame can play carries. He used to be known for his Rumble. His Jace was also a big thing in the past. I'm pretty sure he used to play a lot of Kennen as well. Like, he's been playing for years, so it wouldn't surprise me. I feel like that they can be flexible. It's just a matter of how comfortable are they in a meta that is so much more focused on actually moving around the map rather than just relying on individual lane talent.
So you're Mad.
I'm predicting Mad, yeah.
What do you got for me?
It's really hard. I think Vedius got a good point there about Kennen. I think Kennen will be like a really strong champion Renekton in this series, and I think that's like Odoamne bread and butter. So maybe he can like find the lead over Armut. So then Matt maybe kind of skewed me more towards Rogue, but I think I trust Mad more because of Rogue's inconsistency. So I would go Mad as well. But I would also predict like a 3-2. I think this would also be a 5-game series.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards Mad. I had it earlier. I think just Elio is playing incredibly well, and I've seen like Mountaineer has really high highs, but he's also had some low lows this season. And I generally, I have faith in that. I feel like that team is the whole package when they're not shooting themselves in the foot. And Rogue, there's some holes that they absolutely can fill in, but I'm not giving them that Fnatic, I believe that they're going to shine when the pressure is on. Doubt.
For sure.
Because I don't think that has historically been the
But
case.
I will say that if Rogue is in the lower bracket, I expect them to make a pretty good run.
Oh, yeah. I believe Rogue will go to Worlds.
I think whichever one of these teams goes to the lower bracket will make a pretty
We'll
good
make
run.
a good
Yeah,
run.
yeah,
The
yeah.
both these
100%.
teams are probably going to Worlds. I think these teams are both. I think that, again, we'll find out a lot from that Fnatic Excel series, but I would not bet on either of those teams to make a deep run until we see them in a best of 5. Like, I would not blind bet on either of those teams. I think that would be crazy.
Yep.
Transitioning away, we got 2 things left to do. We got to talk about G2 versus Misfits, and we have to fill in our playoffs brackets, which I'm going to start partially filling in now, just to save us a bit of time as we get.
Well, right now, there's not much of a difference, right? The only difference is he predicted XL.
Yeah. So for now, let's talk a little bit about Misfits versus G2. This
is the most one-sided I
sided,
think
yeah.
we have of playoffs, at least based on our expectations. Because G2, like I've already said it a bunch of times, but I'll keep saying it. The 8-1 run, like they fixed a lot of their issues. I say fixed, they've improved. Their early game is not bad anymore. Their early game was really bad, like really, really, really bad, and now it's a lot better. I don't think that their early game is like the best in the league all of a sudden, but I definitely think it's to a point where they can have a lot more confidence and faith in their ability to play through the early game. But I feel like that the way they play the map in general is just very good. I know that sounds a little generic, but their lane assignments, like Caedrel used a loose example of, hey, we're going to play for bot lane. So Caps looks to roam, and then Broken Blade, after he's based, goes to catch mid wave after getting a deep push top, right? Like their lane assignments, that type of thing is just very smart, and they're trying to min-max everything. They set up plays very effectively. They team fight very well, and they've also got a lot of clutch players on their roster that if they need to, like we all saw the Caps amazing play that he did in the final week. I think they titled it Caps Enters Stage Left. Great title, by the way, whoever clipped that out. But the fact that he can do things like that on Silas also goes to show the fact that this team is incredibly flexible. They have a lot of options when it comes to the draft. They can play through any lane, which is what Caedrel was talking about earlier. They just seem like the most complete team right now. And the biggest issue they had during the regular season was that their early game was abysmal. That first 8-minute period that Comp was talking about, everything about it was bad. But now it feels much better, much more secure, and overall you can have a lot more faith in it.
Yeah, everything that he said, I completely agree with. And the last thing I'll just round out with the can play on 3 lanes point is they can play on 3 lanes in a scaling way and in an aggressive way, right? You can have Broken Blade on Sejuani, you can have him on Yone. And in that case, you can leave him on an island on Sejuani or an island on Yone and then come back to it because it'll scale well. But they can also play it in an aggressive sense where you can play for Gwen early, right? Or you can Flakked first pick Draven like 2 games in a row, like completely out of nowhere. He had 1 Draven game, I believe, before that against Astralis, which looked kind of shaky. But then he's just coming into the week against Fnatic, first picking Draven against Mad Lions, first rotating Draven against Unforgiven, popping off with some good scorelines.
But do you remember last split where he did that with like Xayah too, where like there was champs that he just never played before, and then he just brings them out. And he
Did he
looks
do
like
that
a
in
god on
playoffs?
them. Last split, yeah,
Oh, I don't
it was
remember.
crazy because it was just a Jinx Aphelios meta, right? And everyone's saying that like, oh, he can pretty much only play one of these.
Oh
two
yeah, he
champions.
did it against Fnatic and Rogue.
Yeah, and then he just brings out the Xayah, and then he absolutely smurfs it on the Xayah as well.
Yeah,
I think he
that's-
also had a Misfortune in playoffs too. Was the other one he brought out? Like
Misfortune, yeah. I believe there was the Xayah meta when MF was the counter, but no one was playing MF into it, and
then
everyone
he
was
brought it
blinding
out.
Xayah, so
Yeah.
he just brought it out himself, yeah. So I think Flackett's definitely pleasantly surprised me in terms of his champion pool. You know, he's not relying on the Zeri or the Aphelios or the Twitch. He's just able to first rotate Draven and still play things like Aphelios and Sivir, so they have so much flexibility, this team.
and then you got Caps and Broken Blade.
And you've got and you've got Yankos who can play
I think
anything.
unarguably the strongest top side in our league.
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing about this, and you guys have already highlighted, but I want to double down because I've been vocal about Flakked in the past that I don't think that he's reached the highest heights yet, but I think that the Draven was really big, and I think in general his performance has been really good. Him and Targamas have been stepping up, and I think that's such a massive boon for G2. And it probably didn't matter that much in this series, to be honest with you, because it's highlighted top lane meta. We're seeing a lot more counter picks. We're seeing a lot more, and I expect that G2 will most likely still win through top side in this series.
Well, that's
But-
the thing. You don't necessarily know because I think
Sure.
that's the crazy thing about G2 is they have options.
Yeah, but even let's say Flakked and Darkness weren't performing, I still think that they would be the heavy favorites in this series, right? So the fact that they are is really big. And while they would have been heavy favorites in the series, regardless, it's big when we talk about getting deeper as they face the teams that are higher up in the standings as well. And I think for me, G2 just feel like the clear favorites
Yes.
Yeah.
for everything at this point.
I just think that for Misfits, just to touch on them a bit, I feel like they're just kind of outclassed individually in every role, and I think that's just another big reason why I think G2 have the advantage. You can argue mid and AD is close because I think that's the shining lights of Misfits and that's their best performance. That's the way they kind of get across the finish line, VTO and Neon. But I think across the board they're just individually outperformed. Zanzara has come in and made this team 6-2 in their last 8 games.
Something ridiculous like that. Yeah.
And he has all these incredible early games. I think if you look at his stats, they're terrible when it comes to like CSD and XP. He's always behind, but I mean that's what we expected him to do for his team, right? But I just think on top of the individual outperformance from G2 and the experience, I think the Misfits is just really outclassed in this best of 5.
I think that matchup wise, they're also one of the worst, just because when we think of good early game teams, of all of the 6 playoff teams that we have, Misfits is like the worst early game one of all of them, right? And that's not to say that like their early game is bad, and like they've had better early games, and this is something they've been vocal about or trying to improve, but they alongside G2 are the 2 teams that like during the regular season just had bad earlies. And it's things that they worked on to try and improve. But if you're now G2 coming in and as a fan you're kind of like, I'm still a little bit worried about the early game relative to someone like a Mad or a Rogue or teams that are known for building leads around the early game, Misfits is not that team. You are not afraid about them building that insane early game lead against you. So stylistically as well, G2 is already set up for success against a Misfits team that often relies heavily on their team fighting prowess and ability to play through objectives.
Yeah, and it's something that we're gonna have to watch to see if there's a new version of Misfits as we head into playoffs, if they've evolved more. Because the early games definitely got really good again, then they still had 1 or 2 bad ones. And in general, I think that the team has been improving pretty steadily. I think the addition of Zanzara is obviously a huge boon, as you already mentioned. But this is not the series, and this is not their do or die series either. Courtesy of them finishing top 4, they're able to get an elimination series. For us, it will be against Fnatic. For you, it'll be against Excel, and we'll see if they're able to clench that 4th world seed, that 4th spot right now. But yeah, I think that we'll get to have a more honest perspective on Misfits as we get later, because I don't want to. This is just not a series they're going to win. I think straight up. And if they do and they upset and they make it happen against all odds, I will give them all the credit in the world. But I think that we can dive more into them.
If they qualify for Worlds here, the standings get very weird.
Yeah, everything gets whacked. Yeah, if G2 win, Rogue and Mad lock Worlds. If Misfits win, I have no clue what happened. It's a mess. But I will be shocked if they beat G2.
If Misfits,
and I will think to myself, what the happens? What's going on in our league? Is Misfits just insane?
It's not that. It's not. It's just. I mean, if G2 beat Misfits, G2 are still qualified for Worlds. They go into the upper bracket match, right? And then if Mad beat Rogue as we expect, it's actually Rogue who suffers the most. Rogue just gets screwed because right now, if G2 win and Rogue lose, Rogue still auto qualify for Worlds.
Wait, but hang on.
Because they're higher seed.
Because it's just
Misfits.
the higher seed of the losers from the
Yes.
first round makes it through.
Yes.
It's that simple. So
Yeah, so if G2 win, Rogue and Mad lock Worlds.
yep.
Simple does it.
So Mad is the wait. Okay, I'm not going to delve into that right now.
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
Rogue and Mad.
Anything short of Misfits winning and Rogue and Mad are going to
yeah, G2 and Misfits. So I think we all agree pretty clear-cut favorites is G2. I'm going to predict 3-0 for G2.
Gigavetti.
Don't really care about scoreline. I think 3-0 is actually probably accurate though.
3-1 at best.
3-1. Yeah,
Sorry,
I think 3-0.
Misfits. Sorry,
fair.
Deficio. I know you're going to be in my DMs, but it is what it is.
He can roast us if we're wrong.
Yeah,
and
go
we'll
ahead,
deserve
roast
it.
us.
You know what I mean? We underestimated
valid.
them, but I think based on the information that we have,
Yeah, I'll say it. I am underestimating you, Misfits.
no, I don't think you're I think underestimating is like if you, I don't know, like maybe you
That's
are.
true, man.
but
I'm using that in the
you're
wrong context.
You have given all information that we have, it would be unreasonable to predict anything other than Misfits winning this series. I believe
And then G2 winning the series.
G2 winning the series. Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We're confused today.
Excuse me. It's a hard day.
Cool.
And if
Cool.
we're wrong, God bless. You know.
Cool.
I'm excited for that.
What's next, boss?
All right. Predictions. We got brackets. I partially filled them out based on what you answered. We can scroll through them, Phil, if you want to go. So this is the Drakos bracket filled in based on predictions. So G2, Mad, Fnatic making it through, which means by default, Misfits will then be the opponent and Rogue move on to wait for their opponent. Your brackets are going to look very similar to this. It'll take a second to swap over. Yours is identical to mine, Betty. And Caedrel, so far, yours is only different in the sense that you have put Excel through.
Yep.
So we'll start with you because you're the odd one out there. Caedrel. We're going to fill in the rest of this bracket together, and then Vedi and I will go through ours.
Yeah, I'll just go through it, everything.
Yep.
I think XL will beat Misfits.
But go through slowly because I have to like copy paste these things. We have a little bit of a sketchy setup. XL beat Misfits. So XL make Worlds.
Yep.
XL are our 4th seed at Worlds.
Rogue will beat XL.
Yep. Who beats G2 or Mad? Who wins in the upper bracket?
I think Mad will win.
Oh, god dang.
Jeez. The funny thing about this is he's making this prediction without knowing what these teams look like.
Yeah,
So
it's
at this point,
complete
it's
RNG.
just a flip.
This is just a flip. This is just like
So
absolute.
you can't really hold him accountable and then go into his Twitter DMs and be like, Caedrel, you're so dumb.
This is group pickups, by
Then
the
I
way.
think G2 will beat Rogue,
Yeah.
and I think G2 will win the title.
Okay. Sheesh. G2 champions.
I feel like after what I've learned in the last 4 splits of being in the LEC and being a caster and doing predictions, everything you expect will happen never happens. And I think everything
So you don't expect G2 to win the split?
No. I expect G2. Eventually, it rounds itself out. But in playoffs, it's always just a mess. Like, if Misfits beat G2, I will be surprised, but it wouldn't surprise me that much, actually.
Yeah.
So I think that would be my...
That's your predictions.
Fair.
I think it's fair. And we'll get to follow up. Remember, we're not just going to leave this in the midair. We'll come back to this in the weeks to come to check in based on how the playoffs are going. And we won't update this, but this is just initial predictions.
This is his Pickems.
It's Pickems. It's literally the same as Pickems. It's like you have
Pickems.
maybe slightly more evidence because it's at least teams that have played against each other before, but it's comparable to Pickems in terms of how like intangible it is. Vedi?
Yeah. Well, so I think G2 will beat Mad is the first one.
Okay.
Easy one. And then I think Fnatic beat Misfits, and then I think Rogue beat Fnatic. So I actually think I'm exactly the same as.
you just got G2 in the upper bracket over.
And then, did you say Mad beat Rogue? Who beats Rogue?
Oh, so a part of me feels that Rogue will beat Mad, and then it'll actually be a G2 Rogue final, with which G2 will win.
I guess Rogue are the lowers. Yeah, whatever, dude. I'm not...
But that's what I think is going to happen. I actually think that
Rogue versus G2 finals?
Rogue versus G2 finals.
In Malmö? With Larssen?
But I think top 3 is G2 Mad Rogue, basically.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to lie. Mine is exactly the same as yours, but I'll fill it out anyway. Actually, I'll just say it. Mine is exactly the same as Vedius, but it's going to be Mad in the finals.
But that's the flip, right? The flip is ultimately who do you think is beating Mad versus
The base
Rogue?
predictions is Misfits win versus G2.
Yeah.
Rogue win versus Mad.
Yeah.
I don't know what the lower bracket based one is.
Oh my
Misfits
God.
beat
We should have made
Mad
a base- a
or
Giga-
Rogue
the
in the upper
Giga
bracket
Chad
finals.
predictions.
Just do the base predictions.
What's interesting is that none of us think that Misfits is going to Worlds, which is rough for the boys over there.
I think it's the classic G2 Fnatic Rogue Mad. It's what year was it? 2020?
Yep.
And then Fnatic will lose some play-ins, and then we'll have.
Oh, no,
we'll have
don't.
G2,
Fnatic
we'll
will
have
face
G2.
the third and fourth seed will play each other in play-ins for a best of 5 spot for
Yeah.
groups. I know it's gonna happen.
and
EU
then-
versus EU, one's knocking each other out in play-ins.
And then G2 will lose a tiebreaker to an LPL team, which means they'll be second seed, and then that means they'll go up against the Korean first seed, and then you know how it be. It's just another day of the office.
G2 win.
So we all agree G2 is winning the split. We'll just make a giant G2 here.
But I think I said on your stream that regarding Worlds, I said 2 European teams will get quarters and 1 team will get semis. I
You
think
did.
that's what I said.
That was Vedius' prediction for
Yeah,
everyone
for
at home in
Worlds.
Wait,
Euphoria.
what?
He thinks that this
Yeah,
year...
I did. I said on his stream, I think 2 teams quarters, 1 team in semi for Europe and Worlds.
I need some huff puff of that stuff
Okay,
after
hold
this.
on. I think for every EU team that makes it out of groups, we have to sing another 30 seconds of the song Euphoria. You
Oh, God, yeah.
know what I mean? Like they
yeah.
get,
I will
they
do-
if one team
listen,
wins, they get a
listen.
chorus. If 2 teams wins, they get a chorus and a lead up to a chorus.
See,
if
we don't get-
everyone gets in, we do the
I don't
whole
know if
song.
we have the budget for this, but I'm down to do a cover of Euphoria if a team makes it to the semifinals of Worlds.
Dude,
okay,
we don't get to be biased often, but we need to be biased every now
Oh,
and
at
then. Because
Worlds-
everyone has regional
Oh,
pride when it comes to
no,
Worlds.
that's regional pride.
NA,
Worlds,
LCK,
Worlds, to be
LPL.
clear, on
At Worlds,
cast-
we're coming in.
On cast, I will remain impartial.
Neutral, yeah,
I
yeah,
will state
for
things
sure.
as I have seen them in absolute honesty. On social media and anywhere else, I am EU through and through.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
true.
give a damn, bro. I don't care if Doinby is clapping us in every lane. I'm like, Doinby's about to get messed up
I don't
today.
care. I don't care if it's Misfits versus Damwon in the play-ins. You're like final to group stage.
I love how quickly we've gone to the topic of Worlds, but like that's playoffs.
Yeah.
Get ready, everyone. It's going to be a banger for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, and as a final note, Euphoria MVP for week 8, because we always forget, and we will ask players about their shoe preferences. Upset. It's upset. The Zeri,
Yeah.
one man, against the world.
You can do a
with
bit of eye test.
slightly overtuned, maybe significantly overtuned.
You don't want to give it to
champion.
Caps?
You can do a bit of eye test and say Razork. You could say Caps or Yankos, but I think given the
I kind of want to give it to Caps.
given the pressure of the game and like how important it was, I think G2 were just I don't want to say they were having fun, but like it looked like they were having fun. They were just enjoying themselves. They were relaxed. They were doing G2 things, but like Fnatic were like
Do or die. Yeah, it was do or die.
Is it that meme? You know, the with the guy,
The guy singing.
and the other guy's like,
that's
Yeah, and then, play safe mid, yeah. Fnatic were just told to play safe mid. So a lot of pressure. They pulled it off, and Upset was the one who did it. Flashing forwards against Vitality, kills Perks.
I will take being outvoted, but my vote was Caps, just so the fans don't hate
just
me.
so the well, whatever. just
second
so you
vote
can
was
vote
Caps.
for Caps on
Just
one
so I can
thing.
vote for
huh?
Caps on one thing, yeah.
Just didn't want to vote for Nisqy. Anyway, this has been a
good
particularly
one.
slightly petty episode of
Yeah, it's
Euphoria.
been.
Playoffs is coming up. Let's run you through the schedule real quick because I googled it because Betty made me. Rogue versus Mad on Friday. G2 versus Misfits on Saturday. The 5 versus 6 elimination match on Sunday. Fnatic versus XL. We will know 3 of our 4 Worlds teams by the end of this weekend. Seeding will
G2
be
win.
decided later. No, we'll still know 3 of the 4.
Really, even if Misfits win.
With 3 of the 4 is 3 people will be locked in top 4.
Okay.
Yes.
At the end of this
He's right.
weekend, regardless of the
'cause G2 's
results.
already locked, yeah.
Who will be locked,
Yeah.
we will wait to find out. But we will find out 3 of our 4 world seeds this weekend, with the 4th coming out next week. And it's just going to be an absolute banger. Twitch.tv/LEC, YouTube/LEC, maybe.
Thanks for
I don't
having me,
know, wherever.
boys.
Thank you for being here, Betty.
Thanks for being here, Betty.
We
Love
win
your
just a
insight.
lot, but it's what we love to do.
It's true. That and Hot Drop to Our Death. Hey, love it.
Bye.
Wait, League of Legends. Bye.
Peacekeeper.